Hello, hello. Lately I've been replaying The Forest with some other people. I played Sons of the Forest already quite a lot and wanted to revisit the first game. Just to remind myself what it was like. I played other games like this before, a sandbox builder survival sort of thing, like Valheim, Minecraft, Subnautica, Conan Exiles, things like that. Some of them I bounced off of pretty hard. Subnautica I played for about 30 minutes and I absolutely despised it. I played Conan Exiles off and on with other people for a little bit, but it's a little bit confusing, jank, and I mainly dislike flopping my bits around. But it's always more fun when you have people watching. With some games, I just can't be bothered to play them solo. Building games are like that for me. I wanted to make a short video using the Forest as an example since I've been thinking about this, about communal gameplay. Now, The Forest is this little game about crashing on an island full of crazy cannibal people that want to eat you. It was a fun but limited game. It feels a bit like an alpha for Sons of the Forest sometimes, but it's still a good game. Both are fun games, and neither one really hinges on needing other people in order to do anything. The element of it being cooperative and your creations being visible to other people, for me, is something that I've identified as making things feel more worthwhile. Now, as far as cooperation goes, I have found that some people play the game in completely different ways for completely different reasons. For example, my friend Maria likes to cook and supply everyone with things, make gardens, cure lawns, stuff like that. My buddy Kel likes to wander around more than build, and only played the game originally as an adventurer. He would go through Sons of the Forest and set up zip lines and travel systems and things like that. On the server, it also has some people who mainly just like decorating or coming up with building solutions or collecting materials for building and not really doing anything actively, but mainly, just supporting other people. And of course, you'd run into some people that don't really want the building aspect and mainly just want to fight things. They want the combat. And they would only build just enough in order to supply them with what they needed to go out into the wild and fight them some cannibals. Perfectly reasonable. Now, I'm not sure if it's because I'm the server owner in this case, but I'm usually the person that ends up being the architect. I like making buildings that have some sort of pragmatic point to every room or some sort of function. Now, back whenever I played Minecraft, and this is even true for creative servers, this inevitably would escalate into making mob spawn machines that slaughtered monsters in waves as they spawned to funnel all their resources into trap catchers. Unfortunately, you can't quite do that in the Forest, but in the Forest I like making these external quick access storage room for bringing in things like logs and bones, etc. using zip lines. I like to think about them being adjacent to the things that they're used for. Gardens that grow well-organized groupings of every kind of crop, kitchen for drying meat, boiling water, storing medicine, etc. I'm an organized thinker, so I plan the same way. Using another example, I used to play Dwarf Fortress, yes, but I found it very hard to play that game because you have to build very quickly and change layouts over time. But I always wanted to pause, lay out this massive plan for where things eventually would be, but Dwarf Fortress doesn't like it when you do that. That can result in things like deploying to a terrifying class zone where zombie deer and such are attacking your recruits all the time, with no time to actually sneak out and build walls because you can't dig underground yet. And then one of your pregnant recruits just so happens to give birth during a battle, and she and her newly minted war baby go on a warpath and kill everything there. The end result being a 1-month-old the game classifies as insane, but also relaxed, confident, but needing alcohol to get through the working day. Dwarf Fortress is an interesting game, maybe check that one out too. But anyway, as an artist, I like everything to look nice, and if possible, like it's part of the environment. Now, back in my high school and college days, I would take these old career aptitude tests, and they always told me the same thing, that I was going to be an architect. I'm not an architect, but it makes sense. This is the kind of thing that I like to do, it's the kind of thing a lot of artists like to do. An artist's behavior is that we like it when other people react to the stuff that we make. In many cases, that's a primary motivation for why we're making something at all. Now, everyone's multifaceted, that's not a 100% thing, but you get the idea. Whenever I'm building my nasty little The Forest log house, I like other people to engage with my ideas and then get feedback about it. Now, I feel that's true with a lot of games. Even if you're not an artist, consider something like a create a character. For some people, playing a create a character instead of a pre-made whomever can heighten the experience of playing because others get to see your creation, however horrific you have made it. Cosmetics have a very similar effect, and they can lengthen the time that you end up spending with an experience. Look at Warframe, for example. You think Wisp is popular just because of the buffs? I know I wouldn't be bothering playing Ember without the big, well-developed, fiery ass. By the way, one of the latest Warframe quests is about an impregnated Warframe. They know. They know what I did to my Avara. Anyway, community feedback. We like being seen, acknowledged. Some people have no interest in this at all, but a fundamental appeal to many isn't completing something designed to be completed. It's doing something unique and personalized. Some sandbox games focus on survival, others on building up tiers of difficulty. Even for people that are preoccupied mainly with visuals, different games deliver different kinds of vibes. Sunken Land, for example, I found really unappealing because it just looks like a bunch of garbage bins tied together, and hell, even in building the roof tech doesn't even work. In the forest, the buildings are basically just always logs, but it's not too junky looking and it's also not too fancy. It's kind of a good mix. You can end up making some sort of nice looking homes, more like a hobo mansion, but you get the idea. Whereas of course there are other games that have even nicer looking buildings, but the end result can always end up looking the same because they're too heavily curated as a design philosophy, so that ends up removing all sense of your own personalized individual flair, which can inadvertently make it unappealing to play because everything is too curated and too similar. So oddly enough, jank, which the forest has quite a bit of, can help with this sort of communal feedback feeling because it can be hard to do things, so when you pull it off, it actually does look impressive. Either way, building something in single player can feel a bit impotent sometimes, since you're the only person that's ever going to see it. The moment that you know that other people are seeing or even enjoying and using what you've made, ugh, happiness go up. It is a very primal feeling. It's a baked-in human behavior to enjoy networked resources, creating towns, and supporting a community. In Sons of the Forest, you're given a helper named Kelvin, or Kevin if you're a monster. He was injured in the crash and isn't quite all there as a result. Now, it's not really intended this way, I think, but the desire to take care of Kelvin hooks into that feeling of community. Your NPCs will use the stuff that you make, relax, and even have their mood fluctuate based on their comfort level. Now, unfortunately, they can't appreciate how radical a zipline system spanning an entire mountain is, but still, you get the idea. The creator obviously does at least appreciate showing you with the NPCs that you're doing a good job. Something that is unique about these kind of builder games is that there's often no uniform goal and a lot of things to do. It's very hard to design a game that has no real goal, since players will, start the game and get lost or confused on what it is that they're supposed to be doing. Not everyone deals with having no direction at all. Some want to be told at least a general goal to get them going. And some people just want to be told exactly what it is that they're expected to do and then do it optimally. In the forest, the premise is that you crash and you need to find your son who has been abducted. And during the course of doing all your little projects, you'll sometimes remember, oh yeah, I have a kid, I forgot. In the story of Sons of the Forest, it's more of a New Vegas sort of situation in which you're trying to find some jackass after your helicopter is shot down. And in many builders, there's no story at all. So part of the design is directing without directing and not overwhelming the player. But in the case of a new player joining an existing server, other players building things around them will often inspire them to create or adapt the ideas that they're seeing. It works the same as it does in real life. New technologies and advancements are often incorporations of unrelated ideas that people want to see working together. Each of these players is creating their own narrative. Dwarf Fortress is renowned for things like Boat Murdered, I can't explain that right now, just go look it up, because of their emerging narratives. Multiplayer is often added the titles to greatly prolong the experience because it creates dynamic exchanges. When you put a bunch of people together in a sandbox game, you naturally get narratives and a dynamic experience. The key to a sandbox is the ability to find yourself in an experience, and community drives a lot of that. Knowing other people are having a good time with you can drive you to experience things that you never would have bothered with otherwise. In designing a sandbox, I think it's important to be able to avoid combat if you want, avoid people if you want, and even avoid building if you want to. And that is something the forest does very well, since you can sustain yourself entirely without any form of civilization, just existing as a hunter-gatherer. And I like that the forest, even if I don't play this way, attracts a lot of different kinds of playstyles and it doesn't lock you into doing anything. And even though I like the cooperation, it doesn't force you into that either. I think that those kinds of lessons are important to learn for any game that you're making. Adding in optional cooperation, often, not always, elevates any kind of game. Alongside that, the ability to engage with any number of optional systems that don't force you into using them can accessorize an experience, especially whenever you have other people that like those things when you don't. Unfortunately, these days it's become more and more common to design something and then try to force square players into circular holes. An example of this could be modern FromSoft games, which used to be more about a general adventure, but have now narrowed into revolving primarily around boss fights that are hitting the limit of human reaction times, instead of just blanking out into new things to do. This lesson of trying not to force people into having a very particular, specific kind of an experience is also something that you can carry over into film, TV, and novels. It's important in those to have both a variety of things to project onto, but also room for communal discussion and adaptation into new forms. It's sort of how, like, a good YouTube video may struggle because engagement goes up from contention and disagreement. When there's missing information and room for people to come up with their own conclusions and debate meaning, it popularizes content. It sort of reminds me how Zelda lore was a popular content type before Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom arguably undermined itself with mundane answers. I know that's something that Zelda lore people have been complaining about. It's also why I often write a perfect script and then I crap it up for you guys, like this one, so you have something to talk about in the comments section. No need to thank me, guys. But something that I have noticed with a lot of successful series is that they often stem from loving the characters. Star Wars, Harry Potter, whatever. How the setting works does not matter as much as your ability to spend time with them and feel like there's a community around the characters. We are wired for communal development. Now, in Sons of the Forest, it can be a little awkward trying to keep everyone up to date. People can join the server and you have to escort them through the caves that you've probably done a dozen times to get them one item. But that's part of the community, part of the game. Once you build one base, you can build another one somewhere else and start over. And with no end goal and no need to do every single thing yourself, you could end up blocking in cannibals into their spawn rooms and industrialize the entire island, with a save file so large it takes 10 minutes to load. It's up to you. Eventually all your personal goals peter out, and you're only left with good memories. In theory. Or in my case, with my bad memory, the need to remake them with a new map. Which is exactly what I did. And also, possibly, why I will remake this video in the future having totally forgotten that I even made it. Oh boy. But those are my thoughts on this sort of communal building thing that I've been having lately and how it ties into so many other things. In a weird way, it sort of loops back into my thoughts on projection, heroes, and villains that I had in my Metal Gear video about the main character in Phantom Pain. Go watch that one, that's one of my best videos. It unfortunately does not have as many exposed cannibal yabos. Still good though. Alright, I'll see you guys next time.